Hi there. This is my one-take video for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't really have a lot to say about Harry Potter, the film, or even the book. I think any professor these days would be hesitant to present themselves as an expert on Harry Potter when in fact their students, you, are much more knowledgeable about Harry Potter than professors are, certainly more than I am. I actually don't own any Harry Potter books. I know, it's a terrible thing. However, I used to live in a group house, and one of the people living in the group house was a high schooler named Sarah, and she was a huge Harry Potter fan, a nerd even. He was her hobby horse. She had all the Harry Potter books, and I remember a couple occasions at least where she went out at midnight to some bookstore and bought herself the latest Harry Potter. And I swear by midnight the next day that book was finished. So, and I imagine that that describes your experience, or at least the experience of many of you. Um, so, I mean, haven't read the Harry Potter books, but I certainly admire the Harry Potter books and admire the phenomenon of the Harry Potter books in terms of what it's done for books and reading. And, I already talked about in my essay about how books and reading is thematized in the book and not so much in the film. But I'm very, very grateful to J.K. Rowling for popularizing reading for a younger generation. As an aspiring writer, I can only applaud that that J.K. Rowling brought more readers into the world. So, in a sense, reading. I would like to encourage reading as a hobby horse. Is something that people get a little obsessive about. Kind of like what I was saying about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and his book club. He's someone trying to encourage reading as a hobby horse as well. So, the reason I didn't read Harry Potter, not because I didn't want to, I really did, but I was in grad school at the time, and I only had time to read academic books, books written by Jacques Derrida or Michel Foucault and post-structuralists and new historicists and all of that stuff, which is quite boring to read. Harry Potter is much more pleasurable, at least for the little bit that I've read. So I guess I'll have to read all the Harry Potter in my retirement. Let me mention an anecdote concerning Harry Potter. A year ago, I went to a street festival in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, not too far away from where I live now. And I met, there were, lots of artisans and craftspeople who had their booths on Main Street, and, we walked around and checked them out. And I met a woodworker, and he had wands for sale. Oh, wow. I asked him if, I was kind of joking, I asked him, do you have any Harry Potter wands? And with a straight face, he said he didn't have any, but he did make them. He told me he was sold out. So I still wasn't sure if he was serious or not, so I sort of was playing along, I thought, and said, do you have any Dumbledore wands? He said he was fresh out of those. Maybe this guy is serious. But he said he was working on one earlier in the day, but he left it at home because it was unfinished. Okay. Then he said he had a McGonagall wand earlier, but he sold it. So no McGonagall wands either. It was pretty clear by now this guy was pretty serious. He was a real Harry Potter nerd. Harry Potter was his hobby horse. So I kind of backed away slowly, saying, I think I'm going to go look at some other booths. But a few moments later, he showed up at my side with not a card, but a sheet that showed his next event, the next festival he was going to. And he assured me he would have a full variety of Harry Potter wands on sale if I wanted one. So I thanked him for the information. However, I did not go back, and to this day, I do not have a Harry Potter wand, nor a Dumbledore wand, nor a McGonagall wand. Um, so, oh well. All right, let me. What am I talking about now? So, I mean, that's to say, I'm cognizant, I'm aware of sort of the phenomenon of Harry Potter in the world. It's hard not to be. So I know all about the wands, and I've seen all the movies, so that much I can say. I haven't read the books. So, and I mean, that's the way it often is with students, isn't it? That yeah, you don't read the book, but you see the film, particularly in film classes, particularly this class. Anyway, so when I was growing up, there wasn't any Harry Potter, but I had my own version, my own fantasy series that I was pretty obsessed about. You know, I didn't just read the books. You know, I bought paraphernalia, calendars, and I forget what else. But what I'm talking about here is J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. And this is actually the edition that I read when I was a kid, actually in high school. You know, I read The Hobbit when I was a kid, and then I tried to read Fellowship of the Ring, and it seemed beyond me because it's a very, very different work. It's an epic, and it's for adults as opposed to The Hobbit, which was clearly a children's tale. But anyway, so this is not the movie tie-in version. This is the original version that I read many years ago. Of course, the mystery here is why are the first two books priced $1.75 and the third is priced $1.25? Probably because they were published at different times, though it's the same edition. Anyway, so I didn't live in Harry Potter's world. I didn't live in Hogwarts. I lived in Middle Earth. That was sort of my main fantasy area. And this is back in the day when there weren't any video games, and television was very, very limited. So you didn't get to see much fantasy except in movie theaters, and that was pretty rare. Before The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, I became obsessed with that. Maybe I mentioned I read the series 3 times in high school. So I was really into it. But before that, I was really into the Hardy Boys mysteries. And there's like 40 some books. They're short, but I had most of them. I have no idea where they are now. And before that, I read my first big fantasy series that I really invested myself in was the Dr. Dolittle series, a series of books for children written by Hugh Lofting. That was my first really immersive reading experience. Let me just say a little bit about the movies. I'm going to talk about The Lord of the Rings and also The Hobbit. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I mean, this is a film adaptation course. I could very well put The Return of the King on the syllabus because, well, I mean, either of any of the 3 books, 3 film versions of the books, I mean, they're all excellent. The Return of the King, I thought was well deserving of Best Picture Oscar the year it came out. So, a wonderful adaptation. Not very daring, not like some of the works we've been looking at in this course, but very more or less faithful with making changes it need to hold the story together and to sort of update it. So it was certainly an improvement on the previous Lord of the Rings film version, which you've probably never heard about, not even sure if you can get it anywhere, and that is Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. Ralph Bakshi, well, he made his name by creating a cartoon, an X-rated cartoon called Fritz the Cat, and then later on went into more respectable affair, which would be The Lord of the Rings. If you are able to see it, you can see that the animation style is quite. It was innovative for the day in that day. Today we'd look at it and think it's sort of muddy and messy and not very well done. It's actually an early form of rotoscoping. You film it live action, and then you just basically color each individual film cell. So that's what Ralph Bakshi did. But as I said, the result wasn't that promising, and it bombed at the box office. So I was, as a Lord of the Rings fan, when I had to go see that, and I did, and I was disappointed, but I was happy to see Peter Jackson's trilogy. Probably the problem with Bakshi's version is he he tried to do all three books in one film, and he just had to leave too much out, and so it was just sort of the skeleton, really, of the story. It, and that, if I can segue into Peter Jackson again here, I want to talk about The Hobbit. The problem with The Hobbit is that Jackson tried to take the three, take one book and turn it into three films, as opposed to what Bakshi was doing, taking three books and trying to turn it into one film. When you try to take a slight book like The Hobbit, a book for children, and try to expand it into three films, you're necessarily going to do a lot of violence to the story, and along with getting people to accuse you of being mercenary and trying to make three films and make a lot of money instead of one film, which would make a lot of money but not as much as three. So, but as I said, the Hobbit, it's a story for children, and turning it into a big epic and a story for adults, you do a lot of violence to the story, the characters, and the tone of the story. So Jackson basically in The Hobbit takes a whimsical fairy tale and turns it into an epic war saga, and again, and not for children, not at all. So basically, what Jackson does, and Tolkien tried to do this himself when he did later rewrites, editions of The Hobbit, is that Jackson tries to introduce early on the rise of Sauron, and to set up the Lord of the Rings. That wasn't in the initial version of The Hobbit. There is no Sauron in Tolkien's Hobbit. There's a necromancer, but he's not as much of a threat as Sauron. So again, that's not in The Hobbit. So in terms of adaptation, I would say that The Hobbit, Peter Jackson's Hobbit, is not that faithful, and some of the additions are interesting. I forget her name, but the female elf in the second film is interesting, and that was a good addition, I think. Though it introduced some subplots that are distracting. There's actually, I'll put a link up on the class blog, and it's geek.com. I don't know if you can hear my dog in the background trying to get out of the room. He will in a moment. At geek.com, there is a Tolkien edit of the, I think it's at YouTube, Tolkien edit of The Hobbit. It basically takes the three Hobbit films and edits it into one film. So you can take a look at that and see what you think about it. I'm going to quit now and let my dog out of the room. Here she is.